Hello, my name is Ralph and welcome back to the channel. It's my time, let's go. Today we're going to move ahead with Gus's motor, and I got some parts in and I'm really stoked. I ordered myself a new set of small bore gauges, which are very hard to get for small holes. I have them for my cylinders and such and to measure, but to get down to something that's like 1 5/8 inches and stuff, it's hard to find something. But I did, thank God for the interweb, and I've got a little something to use, and I've been able to check these out. I had a little problem with my telescoping gauges, these little ones like this, and I was getting contradicting readings back and forth and back and forth. I wasn't sure what was happening, and it was getting very frustrating when I got to it. So I took a little trip and went up to see my buddy Jimmy at Scotia Machine, and we talked about what was going on, and I said, Jimmy, here, measure these things for me and see where I'm at. Well, Jimmy, with his many years of experience, was able to teach this old guy a little something again. Turns out that these telescoping gauges, the old ones I had, that the tips were worn just ever so slightly, so when you used them, you would get contradicting readings. So I hope you were able to see those little spots on it. It's hard to get through the magnifying glass and things like that, but it was a lesson learned. Sometimes the smallest of things can cause you big problems. So stop, take a moment, figure out what the problem is. That little rounding off of the edge caused the measurements to fluctuate within 1/1000th of an inch. And we certainly don't need that. Those surfaces should be perfectly smooth and rounded. Who knew? Live and learn, and I'm always learning things, and I'm glad of that. So thanks, Jimmy. Saved me a lot of grief, and I'm glad I stopped before I went too far and made it a bigger problem. So now I've ordered new gauges, and I've ordered a new dial bore gauge. This is it, and it has a very small little end here, and so you're able to tell the little holes. I can use this for the bottom of the rods. I can use this for the pinion shaft holes, so I'm stoked about it. It's a new tool. Sometimes you got to break down and buy them, and after my many years of being here, I figured why not treat myself. So let's get on to Gus's. I've got my exhaust valves. We're going to lap them in there today, get those heads ready. I'm going to take some measurements and make sure we get the clearance for the cam that we've got, and move along with some other things, probably getting at the bottom end today. All right, let's go. Big shout out down there to Hippie's Chopper Corner and to Slickhead Custom Cycles down there. Both have helped me grow a lot, and we've becoming good friends and done some contacting back and forth through emails. It's a wonderful thing to be able to talk to other like-minded people about things that you like, and these guys have great channels, and they're doing their thing and I'm doing mine. I'm so happy to be associated with them. So if you've got time, check out Hippie's Chopper Corner and Slickhead's Custom Cycles. I'll leave links in the description for you. So while we were working on the bottom end of Gus's, it had steel cages in them which require a different bearing from the aluminum cages. Yeah, I'm correct. 3 sets of bearings and steel cages. And trying to search them out here in the Great White North wasn't as easy as I thought. Turns out I couldn't get standard ones. I couldn't get 2 10,000ths over. The only thing I could get that was available was 4 10,000ths of an inch. So consequently, what we had to do was resize the bottom of our rods so that they would fit properly. With our new dial gauge, I'm sure where I'm going now, but I'll show you the advantage of using it and how it's going to become a great tool. So when we get our dial bore gauge set up, it comes with different anvils, they call them, to put in here at different lengths. And you will take your micrometers. What we have here is locked on the size that we want. And what we want is 1 inch, 626,000ths of an inch is where we need it to go. By taking your micrometers and setting them in the gauge here, we can dial this gauge in and set this on 0. So we know right now it's set on 0 and we're 1 inch, 626,000ths of an inch. Having set that and locked everything into place, now we're able to check our rods. And what we do is set it right down in the bottom of the rods and rock it back and forth and check our readings all around. So by sitting it into our rods here, and we're just going to check it here, and we're right on the 0. I'm hoping you can see that showing up in there. And we'll also check it around in different top to bottom. And that's right where we want to be. And we'll do the same with our other rods. And you can see we're just touching the thousandths of an inch there. There we go. So we'll go around and check them this way, and this way, and this way. All at different angles all around to make sure, and both sides of this rod, to make sure that we have them where we want them. Well, as you can see, it's a very valuable tool. Yes, we can do it with these telescoping gauges and measure, and now that I have new ones, I'm getting the correct measurement off them like I wanted. It's just a lesson learned as you go along. If you're questioning something and you're thinking, well, that doesn't seem right, I just can't quite get it, take a moment and figure it out, because it could make the difference between right and wrong and what's happening, especially when we come to rod bottoms and things like that. We need to be accurate and be sure. If you're doing 4 or 5 measurements and they're all over the place, something's wrong. Having been in this trade for many, many years, I knew something wasn't right, but I had never personally heard of the telescoping gauges ends wearing. Once I looked at them underneath a little magnifying glass, it was plain to see that the ends had been rounded off. And by holding them at a certain way, I was getting the measurements I needed. By holding them another way, I was out almost at half a thou to a thousandth of an inch. So I got to thank Jimmy for updating me and showing me what can go wrong. And it was just another little trick of the trade that I never thought about. Now I do. Now I will check all my other ones. So, if you can buy tools, buy tools. Sometimes things that you think are expensive are not out of the ballpark when it comes to being able to make the right decision on what you're doing. And it's imperative that that's done. Okay, so let's move on with it. We know the rods are good. I'm just going to get ready to lap in my exhaust valves, check some measurements on the heads, make sure they're good, and we'll be putting the bottom end together. Stick with us. So now that we've got our new exhaust valves, I'm just going to lap them in here and make sure that we've got a nice seat all around in there. Oh, a little bit of compound. Just put a little dab around and slide the valve in. And we'll have a quick peek. And that's giving me just a nice little seat around there. And it's hard to see, but we've got a nice seat in the middle of the valve. Got a little shiny spot on the edge and a little shiny spot up this edge. It's hard to see there, and I'm not sure if you can, but we've got a nice gray seat forming right around there. So we'll have a peek in here. I always find a little bit of contact cleaner or brake clean in there. We'll make the satin part stand up so you can see it. And that looks really good there. Really good. So I'm just going to give it one more little go. And maybe I can make it a little better to be able to see. But I'm happy with that. There, that felt a little better. I don't think that putting light on it will help a little bit, but you can see the gray satin finish around there. And we're going to wash these heads out extremely well again, just to make sure that there's no compound in them at all. And there, I think you can see the satin around the seat. So we'll keep our valves with the head so that when we go to set them up, we have the right ones in the right ones. And there you go. You can see some shiny stuff on the edge. Here's the seat is just above the edge, and that's what we want. And we can see our seat down in there as well. Okay, so like I say, we'll stick these in so we know which ones go where, and we keep them together. So now that we've got them lapped in, we will thoroughly clean the heads and wash them out and clean them and get them ready to install. I seen a guy on the internet the other day doing one, and it was on a older motor. I won't even say to try to show what it was, but he was showing you how to put together quick, and he was lapping his valves in and then just put a little spray in there and taking a wipe, and that was good enough. I can tell you that lapping compound is a lot finer than that, and it will go anywhere. And he was just going to put it together that way, still honed it out, cylinders out, and just give them a quick wipe with some oil. And in my belief, everybody can do what they like, but in my mind, if you're going to clean it, clean it. And that stuff, any kind of lapping compound, can be so very destructive throughout the whole system. You might not see it right off the bat, but you will see it over time, and not a lot of time either if it's not cleaned out like that. So if you're doing anything that I'm doing here and trying to move along with it or lapping something, please bar saw it all out, then wash it with hot soapy water, clean it out and blow it out, and make sure that there's no sign of any kind of compound in it. Next thing we have to look at is our valve stem height and things like that for the camshaft, and we'll kind of walk you through a little bit of that and see how that goes. So we've put our keys in our valve collar here, and we've held it up there as best we can, and we need a measurement from inside of here, from the bottom of the top collar to the bottom collar to the bottom valve guide. And we've got about 717, 720 large collar, so 0.718 was the intake. So we'll do the same here on the exhaust. It's a little tricky sometimes to get the keys in there. Patience is a virtue. Okay. And we check the valve stem protrusion on this one. So we got a problem with the guides, and the guides stick up taller than the stock guides. And it's creating a bit of a problem for me now when it comes to clearance. And we've got this little small cutter, and what we're able to do is cut some off the top of the guide carefully. I'm trying to work it down to get it down to the height the other one is. We're close there now. Very close. I think just a little tiny bit more, and we should have it. Just another 1/10 or so, and we should be there. Tiny bit more off of that side. Five. That's about where we want it. Making sure that the tops of the underneath the valve collars don't hit the exhaust guide is very important on these, especially on the 81 heads, 8081s. They're made a little bit different, and that's creating the problems. I probably should have spun the guides off at first, but I didn't, so it is what it is. So we'll just clean them up and dress them up, run my little hone through just to make sure there's no burrs in them, and we'll be good to go. There, that's looking better. Let's blow her out. That's going to give me what I need. It's just these that are quite tall, so I'm trying to see how much I can get away with in there. These valve guide seals, or any of them for that matter, take a measurement like this, down in the depth, and take a measurement like this on the total height, subtract the two, and that'll tell you how much this is going to stick up above the valve guide. Very important measurement to have. Those are about 140 thou tall. So the intakes are fine, it's just the exhaust that I'm dealing with there. I'm going to see what else I got for seals, because these are quite tall. So I'm going to have a quick look and see what I got. Now I'm trying to figure out all the variables of valve height and whether your top spring is going to hit your guide or whether it's going to hit the seals. There's a lot of calculations that go into figuring them out. We have to be very careful with these 8081 heads because they have a problem with the way they're installed into the head and they're made into the head. But that being said, we just have to take our time and do our calculations. Now, there's a few things that I have run into that are going to be a problem that I'm going to have to machine out. Number one, when we look at our bottom collar for the valve guides, and this goes down and the valve guide actually sticks through it. Now, what we have to do is put the seal on our valve guide, but we have to make sure that we've got the seal down as far as we can go on the valve guide. But as you can see here, I can't get it in this hole. I can get it in the back side, but I can't get it in the hole on the front side. And that means that this seal won't go down and seat where it's supposed to on the valve guide, and that's creating a huge problem at this point because it sticks up so high. So what we're going to have to do is just trim the inside of this out ever so slightly, just so we can slide that seal through it and get it to go down and bottom out where it's supposed to be in there. Otherwise, it will stick way up. When the valve comes down, the top collar will hit that and keep smashing it and smashing it and smashing it, and will ruin the seal for sure very quickly. So we have to go along at all four of them. We have to machine out so that that seal will go down inside. It's just about in there, but he still doesn't quite want to go through. And we've got to compensate for when this goes on. This is going to swell up some here once this presses on there, so it can't be that tight. You just don't want to go down below the bottom size. That should about do it. And we haven't bothered the bottom ring in here, which fits against the guide. So that should leave us plenty of safety there. So what we found here with our top collar, something had definitely been rubbing there a little bit. And it's really hard to determine what, and we can't see any marks on anything, but for some reason, whether it was misadjustment of the push rods or something, but there was definitely something that was rubbing along the top there. So what I'm going to do, what I propose to do here, is I'm going to take about 10/1000ths of an inch just off of them, a little bit, just enough to clean it up, and hopefully that won't interfere with the rocker arm. In this case, we'll make a cut and see what happens here and see where we're going. 10 thousandths of an inch is not going to make or break it, but we've cleaned off that spot, and I'm hoping that that will stop any further ones. I'm going to go along and do the same to the rest, just to give me that little extra bit of clearance on the top there. We've got to figure out where our coil bind is. That gives us a number to start with, and then we can figure out our installed spring height. So we just put our springs in the vise, and there is a little cutout here, and we kind of work around for these little cutouts to put them in place. Put it down far enough so that it won't explode. These are zeroed. .885. So those ones there are .885, and we'll go along and measure some of the other ones, and each one will put in the right place for the right head. So as you can see here, we've done some of our calculations to see where we're at, and it takes a little while to figure this all out, but it's well worth it in the end. This here is our valve seal, and the outside height of the valve seal is 525. The inside is 390 down inside, which leaves us 145 thousandths of an inch, which will actually stick up above the valve guide. So we have to compensate for that when we're figuring out how far the valve will move up and down and up and down. So our front head, from the top to from the top where the spring sits, what we're talking about is where the spring sits on this here, and where it sits on the bottom of the steel collar. This measurement in between here, when it's mounted and in the head, is 1.505 inches. From the underneath of this, where your keepers stay inside, so from the bottom of that to the top of the valve guide itself is 0.79. Now this one is quite tall and taller than the rest, and we can use shims and shim it up some, but we'll see to it when we get to it what we're at. Now the exhaust, where we've put new valves in, our exhausts are 475 and 475. They're pretty consistent here with the front and the rear head, but the intakes, there's quite a discrepancy here. Now in doing our calculations, this seems to be our worst here from the top of the valve. Now what we can do is we can cut the valve guide itself down, or we can take a small cut off the bottom of this. No more than 50 thousandths of an inch is what they say, but I could take off, let's say 20 thousandths of an inch, and bring this number up to like 1.70, close to it, 72, 82, 92. So it would bring it up a little bit more closer to this. But we're going to do our calculations and see if we really have to do much of anything. I'm probably going to do a little bit, but we'll get to it when we do the rest of the calculations. Our installed spring height here is our solid heights with this 0.885 plus 60 thou extra clearance, plus our max lift at 450 for the cam we're using, which is 1.395. But in actual fact, this stack, when it's on, will actually stand up probably 100 thousandths of an inch taller than that, because of the way that these are set down inside to allow for more clearance to let the spring come up to let you use higher lift cams without a lot of head modifications. And with these type of collars, they allow the spring to go up a lot farther because this is sunk down where it's hooked onto your valve. So now we have a lot of extra clearance, and I've measured them, and it's almost 100 thou clearance different between a stock setup and the aluminum setup. You can see the difference in the heights here. If we were to hold that even with the other one, you could see how the bottom sticks down a lot farther. So this collar would have to be down like here. So this is how much more the S&S is sticking up and going to give us that much more free length. The reason for that is to use higher lift cams. And if you were to put, say, a 550 lift cam in it, you could do it with this as long as you're checking out your other clearances. We're running a 450 in this, so we're going to be just fine. The VPs here, it's just how far the valve is sticking out of the guide in the head. From the top of the valve to where the bottom of this valve spring sits on the head. These are these distances of how much they stick up. So we don't want to really do anything with these and make it stick up any higher. But as you can see again with this one, we're like 660 here. So we could go a 10 thou on that.
to bring this number into a little more range, or we could cut the top off the collar, as we said. There's a couple ways we can go, and we have to decide which way to go.
Another thing we want to try and do is figure out our spring pressure. And we want to know, when this is installed, and this is crushed down to installation height, how much spring pressure do we have there? I see reports varying all over the place. They'll say 100 to 120 pounds, you know, on a standard shovel and stuff is good. I've seen crane-less stuff at about 155 pounds. You know, at an installed height of 1.5, I think, or whatever. But those are sort of rates that you're running into in that range. So if I'm up to 100 and, you know, between 125 and 150 pounds, it's probably plenty. We don't want too much spring pressure in there, because that just makes it harder on the valve seats and everything else in your drivetrain. So we certainly don't want to be excessive. So we're going to go ahead and check these springs, and I'll walk you through one, and we're going to do the rest of them. But I'll give you an idea of what we're looking at here. Okay, we're going to put our spring on our holder, but we're going to add this into the bottom because our gauge is set up for 1.5 inches. Start out trying to get centered on our spring. That's why we've made the pedestal in the middle. Makes it a little easier for us. Back a little further. And we're about 140 pounds there. I'm going to turn this down. 6, about 10:35. Oh, just about 10:15 there, and my gauge is at about 25 thou. So 15 and 25 is 40. So about 640 there, give or take a little bit. Tiny bit there. So we'll turn it down here to 100, brings us 1.6 right there. So we're about 150 pounds right there. That's what we're looking for. So that gives us right at, and I'm 1.630. And when we've done our calculations, we've taken our bottom piece that we used just to space it up. So our calculations told us that 1.395 was the installed height. So we added 0.235 on the bottom here, the pedestal. So we'll add that to it, and I get 1.63, which is right where I am, 1.630, right there. And we're about 150 pounds is about what I expected with these S&S springs. Our S&S springs allows us a little more travel on that. So, you know, our height is not really that 1.395. You got to add about another 100,000ths of an inch to that. So, if I add 0.1 and just a little bit more, ever so close, 1.73, and I'm looking at it at 100 and about 125 pounds, which would be about right, I would expect, at 125 pounds because you've got the extra tallness of the springs and the spring collars there. It all kind of builds into it, and you're just sort of taking a guess and seeing where you are and looking at the pressures, and I do it for amusement more than anything, but in some cases you need to know. So there, we got it done. It's not an exact science, but this little pressure gauge has come in handy for me to check springs with and give me an idea of where I'm going. Without it, you would have no idea in your spring pressures and such in there. And I like to know that I'm in the ballpark and where they should be. as near as you can figure out. Sometimes some information is hard to find, and other times it's not. But we know that we're well within the ballpark there with these S&S springs. So we have to take all them things into consideration. So what you've seen there, we got a good idea of where we're going. So if you enjoyed our video today, like, subscribe, comment, ring the bell, do those sort of things. It helps our channel to grow. Also, Gus has started the new channel, and it's called Wrenching for Wellness. And I think it's a great thing for him. It's in his heart and what he's been involved in trying to help veterans and other people deal with their own problems, and by wrenching, getting them into a different venue and getting them out to do things and get their mind off the things that are bothering them. So please do support these people. Support Gus in his new venture. I'm sure it'll be well for him. And stick with us for our next video coming along as we put this shovel head motor together. All right.